The morning mist hung heavy over the English countryside as Commander James Mitchell adjusted his uniform one final time. His reflection in the mirror showed a man weathered by years of loyal service to the crown, his graying temples a testament to decades protecting the royal family. Today would be different from his usual duties. Today, he carried orders that made his stomach churn with a mixture of duty and dread. The sealed envelope from Buckingham Palace had arrived at dawn, bearing the official seal and marked with the highest classification. Inside, the directive was clear and uncompromising. Intelligence services had uncovered evidence that several precious heirlooms belonging to the late Queen Elizabeth II had gone missing in the chaos following her death. These weren't ordinary pieces of jewelry or decoration. They were items of immense historical significance, including a diamond brooch gifted by Queen Victoria, a sapphire necklace worn during the coronation, and, most importantly, a small golden locket containing a photograph of the Queen's beloved father, King George VI. The trail had led investigators to an unexpected location. Camilla's private estate in the Cotswolds, a sprawling property she had owned long before marrying King Charles. The very thought of searching the Queen Consort's personal residence felt like crossing a line that should never be crossed, but the evidence was too compelling to ignore. Security footage from the palace showed several items being removed during the transition period after the Queen's passing, and financial records revealed unusual activity in accounts connected to the estate. Commander Mitchell gathered his most trusted officers in the briefing room at Windsor Castle. The team consisted of 6 elite guards, each handpicked for their discretion and unwavering loyalty. Detective Inspector Sarah Reynolds from the Metropolitan Police's Art and Antiques Unit would accompany them, bringing her expertise in recovering stolen historical artifacts. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on everyone present. "This operation requires absolute confidentiality," Mitchell began, his voice steady despite the turbulence in his chest. "We are not acting against Her Majesty Queen Camilla personally. We are following evidence that suggests these items may be at her estate, possibly without her knowledge. Our goal is recovery, not accusation." The drive through the countryside felt longer than usual. Rolling hills and ancient stone walls passed by the convoy of unmarked vehicles, each carrying officers who understood they were about to make history for all the wrong reasons. The estate appeared in the distance like something from a fairy tale, its honey-colored stone glowing in the afternoon sunlight. Manicured gardens stretched for acres, punctuated by centuries-old oak trees and carefully maintained hedgerows. As they approached the main gate, a sense of unreality settled over the group. This was not some common criminal's hideout or suspicious warehouse. This was the private sanctuary of a member of the royal family, a place where she retreated from the pressures of public life. The irony was not lost on any of them that they were about to search for the previous queen's treasures in the current queen's private domain. The estate manager, a nervous man named Geoffrey Whitworth, met them at the entrance. His hands trembled slightly as he reviewed the search warrant, his eyes darting between the official documents and the stern faces of the officers. He had worked for Camilla for over 15 years, managing everything from staff schedules to maintenance of the extensive grounds. Never in his wildest imagination had he expected to be facilitating a police search of his employer's home. "Her Majesty is currently in London attending to royal duties," Whitworth explained, his voice barely above a whisper. "She has not been informed of your visit. I am instructed to provide full cooperation while ensuring minimal disruption to the household staff." The main house stood before them like a monument to English aristocracy. Built in the 18th century, it had been carefully restored to maintain its original character while incorporating modern conveniences. Tall windows reflected the afternoon sky, and climbing roses adorned the stone facade. It was a place of beauty and tranquility, making their mission feel even more surreal. Commander Mitchell took a deep breath as they approached the front entrance. Somewhere within these walls might lie the answers to questions that had plagued the royal household for months. The missing heirlooms represented more than their monetary value. They were tangible connections to a beloved monarch whose death had left an irreplaceable void in the hearts of her subjects. The heavy oak door swung open to reveal an interior that perfectly balanced grandeur with comfort. Persian rugs covered polished wooden floors, and portraits of previous generations gazed down from silk-covered walls. The scent of fresh flowers from the estate's gardens filled the air, creating an atmosphere of refined elegance that made the officers feel like intruders in a sacred space. "Where shall we begin?" Detective Inspector Reynolds asked, her professional demeanor masking the emotional complexity of the situation. She had spent years tracking down stolen artwork and historical artifacts, but never under circumstances quite like these. The search would be systematic and thorough, but conducted with the respect befitting a royal residence. They would examine every room, every closet, every hiding place where precious items might be concealed. The success of their mission could restore priceless pieces of royal history to their rightful place. The failure could create a scandal that would rock the monarchy to its foundations. The search began in the formal drawing room, where afternoon light streamed through tall windows draped in cream silk. Detective Inspector Reynolds moved with practiced precision, her trained eyes scanning every surface for signs of the missing treasures. The room spoke of refined taste and considerable wealth, with antique furniture arranged around a marble fireplace and oil paintings depicting pastoral scenes hanging in gilded frames. Commander Mitchell felt the weight of history as his team carefully examined each piece of furniture. Every drawer was opened with reverent care, every cabinet inspected with the thoroughness their duty demanded. The Queen Consort's personal belongings told a story of a life lived between two worlds, her existence before joining the royal family, and her current role as one of Britain's most prominent public figures. In an ornate writing desk near the window, Officer Thompson discovered a collection of correspondence that made everyone pause. Letters from various auction houses and private dealers, discussing the potential sale of items of historical significance. The dates on these letters coincided suspiciously with the period immediately following Queen Elizabeth's death. Reynolds photographed each document carefully, noting the official letterheads and detailed descriptions of jewelry pieces that matched some of the missing heirlooms. The team moved methodically through the house, their soft footsteps echoing in the corridors lined with family photographs and royal memorabilia. The dining room yielded nothing of interest beyond an impressive collection of fine china and crystal. The library, however, proved more intriguing. Behind leather-bound volumes of classical literature, Officer Davies found a small hidden compartment containing additional correspondence and what appeared to be appraisals for several pieces of royal jewelry. As they climbed the grand staircase to the upper floors, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. The bedrooms represented the most private spaces of Camilla's life, areas where she could escape the constant scrutiny of public existence. Commander Mitchell felt acutely aware that they were violating boundaries that should never be crossed, yet the evidence they were uncovering made it impossible to stop. The master bedroom was a study in understated luxury. The four-poster bed was draped in pale blue silk, and French doors opened onto a balcony overlooking the estate's gardens. Personal photographs lined the dressing table, showing happier times with family and friends. It was here, in a jewelry box tucked away in the walk-in closet, that they found their first concrete evidence. Detective Inspector Reynolds carefully extracted a small velvet pouch from beneath other jewelry pieces. Inside was a diamond brooch that perfectly matched the description of one of the missing heirlooms. The piece was unmistakable, a stunning arrangement of diamonds in the shape of a spray of flowers, created by the royal jewelers in the 1890s. It had been a personal favorite of Queen Elizabeth II, worn on numerous state occasions throughout her reign. The discovery sent shockwaves through the search team. Finding one piece confirmed their worst fears while validating the intelligence that had brought them here. Commander Mitchell carefully documented the brooch's location and condition while Reynolds began the delicate process of evidence collection. Every step had to be beyond reproach, as they knew their actions would eventually face the most intense scrutiny. The search of the remaining bedrooms proved equally revealing. In what appeared to be a guest room, they found the sapphire necklace that had been worn during Queen Elizabeth's coronation in 1953. The piece was wrapped in tissue paper and hidden in a hatbox at the back of a wardrobe. The sight of this particular treasure filled the officers with profound sadness, as they remembered images of the young queen wearing it during one of the most significant moments in British history. As the afternoon wore on, the evidence mounted. Each discovery felt like a betrayal of trust that cut deeper than the last. These were not random thefts by opportunistic criminals. The careful concealment suggested deliberate planning and intimate knowledge of the item's significance. The fact that they were found in various locations throughout the house indicated a systematic effort to hide them from discovery. The most emotionally charged moment came when Officer Parker discovered the golden locket in a small safe hidden behind a painting in the study. This simple piece of jewelry had been perhaps the most treasured of all the Queen's possessions, containing a photograph of her father taken shortly before his death. The loss of this particular item had devastated the royal family, as it represented a deeply personal connection to their beloved matriarch's most precious memories. Detective Inspector Reynolds handled the locket with extraordinary care, understanding that she was holding not just evidence, but a piece of someone's heart. The investigation had taken an intensely personal turn, moving beyond questions of theft to issues of profound betrayal and emotional violation. The missing heirlooms represented more than their considerable financial value. They were tangible links to a woman who had devoted her entire life to serving her country and people. As the sun began to set over the Cotswolds, casting long shadows across the estate grounds, the search team gathered in the main hall to review their findings. The recovered items were carefully catalogued and prepared for transport back to Buckingham Palace. Each piece would undergo detailed examination to confirm its authenticity and document its condition, though there was little doubt about what they had found. The atmosphere among the officers was somber, tinged with a sadness that went beyond professional duty. They had hoped against hope that the intelligence would prove wrong, that they would find nothing and return to London empty-handed. Instead, they were leaving with evidence that would inevitably lead to questions that no one wanted to ask and answers that no one wanted to hear. The journey back to London felt endless as Commander Mitchell's convoy made its way through the darkening countryside. Each vehicle carried its precious cargo of recovered heirlooms, while the weight of what they had discovered settled heavily on everyone involved. The radio remained silent except for essential communications, as no one felt inclined to discuss the implications of their findings. At Buckingham Palace, a crisis management team had been quietly assembled in the private offices of the Lord Chamberlain. Senior courtiers, legal advisors, and family representatives waited anxiously for the return of the search party, knowing that whatever they had found would require the most delicate handling. The potential for scandal was enormous, and the reputation of the monarchy itself hung in the balance. King Charles III had been informed of the operation but had chosen to distance himself from the immediate proceedings, understanding that his personal relationship with Camilla could not be allowed to influence the investigation. The burden of protecting both the crown and his wife created an impossible situation that tested his resolve like nothing he had faced during his decades of preparation for the throne. Detective Inspector Reynolds arrived first at the palace, carrying the secured evidence containers with the same reverence she would show while handling the crown jewels themselves. The recovered items were immediately transported to a specialized examination room where royal jewelers and historians would verify their authenticity and assess any damage they might have sustained during their mysterious journey to Camilla's estate. The diamond brooch was the first piece to be examined under powerful magnification. Master jeweler Thomas Hartwell, who had served the royal family for over 30 years, carefully inspected every facet and setting. His experienced hands trembled slightly as he confirmed what everyone already knew. This was indeed the genuine article, a priceless piece of royal history that should never have left the palace. The craftsmanship is unmistakable, Hartwell whispered, his voice filled with reverence. This brooch was created by Gerard in 1894 for Queen Victoria. It has been worn by every queen consort since, including her late majesty at numerous state functions. The presence of microscopic wear patterns on the pin mechanism confirms its age and authenticity. The sapphire necklace underwent similar scrutiny, revealing details that only enhanced its already remarkable provenance. Each stone had been carefully selected for its perfect color and clarity, and the platinum setting showed the exceptional skill of royal craftsmen from a bygone era. Most significantly, tiny engravings on the hidden clasp matched exactly with palace records, removing any doubt about its identity. However, it was the examination of the golden locket that proved most emotionally challenging for everyone present. When opened carefully under controlled conditions, the small photograph of King George VI was found to be in perfect condition, protected by the locket's careful construction. The image showed a young father smiling at his daughter, captured during a private moment that had sustained Queen Elizabeth through the most difficult periods of her reign. As news of the recovery spread through the palace's inner circles, reactions ranged from relief to profound sadness. The return of the missing heirlooms answered important questions while raising others that seemed impossible to address. How had these treasures found their way to Camilla's private estate? Who had orchestrated their removal from the palace? Most importantly, what level of knowledge did the queen consort possess about their presence in her home? Lord Chamberlain Sir Edward Young faced the unenviable task of briefing King Charles on the full extent of the discoveries. The meeting took place in the king's private study at Clarence House, away from the prying eyes and ears of palace staff. The weight of the evidence made it impossible to avoid difficult conversations about loyalty, trust, and the future of the monarchy. "Your Majesty," Sir Edward began carefully. "The recovered items are unquestionably genuine pieces from Her late Majesty's personal collection. Their presence at Her Majesty Queen Camilla's estate raises questions that require the most careful consideration." King Charles listened in silence as the full report was presented, his face betraying little emotion despite the turmoil that must have been raging within. The man who had waited his entire life to become king now faced a crisis that threatened to overshadow the early years of his reign. The woman he loved and had married despite considerable public opposition was now at the center of a scandal involving his beloved mother's most treasured possessions. Meanwhile, across London, Queen Camilla was completing a routine engagement at a children's hospital, unaware that her world was about to be turned upside down. She moved through the wards with her characteristic warmth, bringing smiles to young patients and their families. The irony was heartbreaking. While she was fulfilling her duties as queen consort, serving the people with genuine dedication, evidence was mounting that could destroy everything she had worked to build. The palace press office began preparing for what could become one of the most challenging periods in recent royal history. Strategic communications experts worked through the night, developing potential responses to scenarios they hoped would never materialize. Every statement would need to be carefully crafted to protect both the institution of the monarchy and the individuals involved, while maintaining the transparency that the British public demanded. As dawn broke over London, palace security was quietly increased, and senior staff members were sworn to absolute secrecy about the night's events. The recovered heirlooms were secured in the palace vault, while investigators continued analyzing the evidence that had been gathered during the search. Financial records, correspondence, and witness statements would all need to be examined before any conclusions could be drawn about how the treasures had ended up in such an unlikely location. The emotional toll on those involved was immense. Palace staff who had served Queen Elizabeth II for decades struggled to comprehend how her most precious possessions could have been removed from their rightful place. The violation felt deeply personal, as if their own memories of the beloved monarch had been somehow tarnished by the discovery. Commander Mitchell submitted his official report with a heavy heart, knowing that his thorough documentation of the recovery operation would eventually become part of a much larger investigation. The professionalism of his team had been exemplary, but nothing could diminish the sadness they all felt at uncovering evidence that pointed toward betrayal at the highest levels of the royal household. The morning after the recovery operation dawned gray and somber over Buckingham Palace, matching the mood of those who knew about the previous day's discoveries. Queen Camilla's scheduled return from her hospital engagement had been quietly rearranged, with palace officials citing unexpected royal business that required her immediate attention. The truth was far more complicated and infinitely more painful. Detective Inspector Reynolds spent the early hours reviewing the additional evidence that had been collected during the estate's search. Beyond the recovered heirlooms, they had found a complex paper trail that suggested the removal of the items had been planned well in advance. Bank statements showed large deposits that coincided with the period following Queen Elizabeth's death, and communication records revealed contacts with several international auction houses known for handling items of dubious provenance. The most damaging evidence came from a private safe in Camilla's study that contained detailed photographs of each missing item, along with professional appraisals estimating their market value. The documents were organized with meticulous care, suggesting someone with intimate knowledge of the palace's inventory systems and access to areas where such treasures would normally be stored. This level of planning indicated that the theft was not a crime of opportunity, but a carefully orchestrated operation. King Charles received regular updates throughout the morning, each briefing adding another layer of complexity to an already impossible situation. His private secretary, Sir Michael Stevens, watched with concern as the monarch struggled to balance his roles as sovereign and husband. The man who had dedicated his life to preserving the monarchy's reputation now faced the possibility that his wife might be implicated in its greatest scandal in generations. The emotional impact became even more profound when Princess Anne arrived at the palace, having been briefed on the situation during an early morning phone call. As Queen Elizabeth's only daughter, she had a particularly close connection to many of the recovered items, having seen her mother wear them during countless state occasions and family celebrations. Her reaction upon seeing the returned treasures was one of barely controlled fury mixed with overwhelming sadness. These pieces were never just jewelry to her, princess, and said quietly, her voice thick with emotion as she examined the golden locket. This locket went everywhere with her. She touched it during difficult speeches, held it when she was homesick on long tours. Whoever took this took a piece of her soul. The investigation team worked methodically through the evidence, but the emotional toll was evident on everyone involved. Royal protection officers who had served Queen Elizabeth for decades found themselves questioning everything they thought they knew about palace security and the people they had trusted to protect the monarchy's most precious assets. Meanwhile, forensic accountants began tracing the financial aspects of the case, following money trails that led to offshore accounts and investment vehicles of staggering complexity. The amounts involved were substantial enough to fund a comfortable lifestyle for decades, but more troubling was the sophisticated nature of the financial arrangements, suggesting professional assistance from individuals experienced in moving valuable assets without detection. Queen Camilla's convoy arrived at Clarence House in the early afternoon, the usually routine journey made tense by the knowledge that everything was about to change. Palace security had been discreetly increased, and media attention was being carefully managed to prevent any premature speculation about ongoing investigations. The Queen Consort entered through a side entrance, away from the usual scrutiny of photographers and royal watchers. The meeting between King Charles and his wife took place in the privacy of his personal study, away from staff members and the formal protocols that usually governed royal interactions. What transpired during that conversation would remain between them, but servants reported hearing raised voices and long periods of silence that spoke volumes about the emotional intensity of their discussion. As afternoon turned to evening, legal advisors worked frantically to understand the implications of the evidence and determine what charges, if any, might be brought. The complexity of royal immunity and the unique status of the monarchy created legal challenges unlike anything in conventional criminal law. Moreover, the political implications of any prosecution would need to be carefully considered by the highest levels of government. The recovered heirlooms underwent further examination by specialists who confirmed not only their authenticity, but also revealed additional details about their recent history. Microscopic analysis showed traces of cleaning solutions and handling that were inconsistent with proper palace storage protocols. Someone had clearly attempted to prepare these items for sale or display, further supporting the theory that they had been removed with criminal intent. Perhaps most heartbreaking was the discovery that several other items from Queen Elizabeth's personal collection had likely been sold already. Computer records found at the estate revealed communications with private collectors and auction houses spanning several months, describing pieces that matched the inventory of missing royal treasures. The realization that irreplaceable pieces of royal history might be scattered across private collections around the world added urgency to the ongoing investigation. Public relations experts worked through the night developing strategies for handling what seemed increasingly likely to become a major public scandal. The challenge was enormous. How to maintain public confidence in the monarchy while dealing with allegations that reached to the very heart of the royal family. Every decision would need to balance transparency with the need to protect the institution that Queen Elizabeth had spent her life building and preserving. As the palace prepared for what might be the most difficult period in its modern history, staff members who had served the royal family for generations struggled with feelings of betrayal and confusion. Many had worked closely with Queen Camilla, developing genuine respect and affection for her dedication to royal duties. The possibility that she might be involved in stealing from Queen Elizabeth's legacy created cognitive dissonance that was almost impossible to process. The investigation was far from complete, but the evidence gathered in just 24 hours had already fundamentally altered the landscape of the monarchy. Trust had been broken, treasures had been recovered, and questions had been raised that would require answers regardless of how painful those answers might prove to be. 3 weeks later, the full scope of the investigation had revealed a conspiracy that reached far beyond what anyone had initially imagined. Queen Camilla sat in the same study where the golden locket had been discovered, now facing the most serious crisis of her life. The woman who had worked tirelessly to earn public acceptance as Queen Consort found herself at the center of allegations that threatened to destroy everything she had built over decades of public service. The evidence against her was circumstantial but compelling. Financial records showed that substantial sums had been deposited into accounts connected to her estate management company, timed precisely with the disappearance of various royal treasures. Communications recovered from her computers revealed discussions about liquidating assets and securing the future, though her legal team maintained these referred to legitimate business dealings unconnected to any theft. Detective Inspector Reynolds had spent countless hours interviewing estate staff, palace employees, and financial advisors, slowly building a picture of how the elaborate scheme might have operated. The investigation revealed that Jeffrey Whitworth, the estate manager, had been struggling with significant gambling debts that made him vulnerable to pressure from individuals seeking access to royal treasures. His cooperation with investigators had provided crucial insights into how the thefts had been orchestrated. The most shocking revelation came from security footage that had been overlooked during the initial investigation. Palace cameras had captured images of Camilla herself removing items from Queen Elizabeth's private apartments during the chaotic period immediately following the monarch's death. The footage showed her taking the diamond brooch and sapphire necklace, concealing them in a handbag before leaving through a side entrance rarely used by senior royals. King Charles faced an impossible choice between his loyalty to the crown and his love for his wife. The evidence against Camilla had become too strong to ignore, yet prosecuting a sitting queen consort would create a constitutional crisis unlike anything in British history. Private meetings with the Prime Minister, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and senior members of the royal family dominated his schedule as they sought a solution that could preserve the monarchy while ensuring justice was served. The emotional breakthrough came during a private confrontation between Camilla and Princess and in the drawing room at Clarence House. Faced with the daughter of the woman she was accused of robbing, Camilla finally broke down and confessed to her involvement in the scheme. Through tears, she revealed that financial pressures from maintaining multiple properties and supporting family members had driven her to make decisions she deeply regretted. "I never meant for it to go this far," Camilla sobbed, her carefully maintained public composure completely shattered. "It started with just one piece, the brooch, to help cover some urgent expenses. I told myself I would return it, but then Jeffrey suggested we could solve all our financial problems. I know how it sounds, but I never thought of it as stealing from Elizabeth. I thought of it as borrowing from the institution." Princess Anne's response was swift and unforgiving. "You didn't borrow anything. You stole from my mother's legacy, from the British people, and from history itself. That locket contained one of her most precious memories, and you were willing to sell it to the highest bidder." The confession triggered a series of emergency meetings at the highest levels of government and the royal household. Constitutional lawyers worked frantically to determine how to handle the unprecedented situation of a queen consort facing criminal charges for theft. The implications extended far beyond Camilla herself, threatening the stability of the monarchy during its most vulnerable period following Queen Elizabeth's death. King Charles made the most difficult decision of his reign, choosing duty to the crown over personal loyalty. In a private ceremony witnessed only by the Lord Chamberlain and the Archbishop of Canterbury, he formally stripped Camilla of her royal titles and privileges, effectively exiling her from the royal family while allowing her to avoid criminal prosecution. The arrangement would spare the monarchy a public trial while ensuring that justice was served through other means. The public announcement was carefully crafted to minimize damage to the institution while acknowledging the seriousness of the crimes. Queen Camilla would retire from public life immediately, citing health concerns that required her to step back from royal duties. The true reason would remain classified for decades, protecting the monarchy's reputation while ensuring that the stolen treasures were returned to their rightful place. The recovered heirlooms were restored to the royal collection with enhanced security measures designed to prevent any similar incidents. The diamond brooch, sapphire necklace, and golden locket were placed in a special display case in the Queen's Gallery, where they served as a memorial to Queen Elizabeth II's legacy and a reminder of the importance of protecting Britain's cultural heritage. Commander Mitchell received a private commendation from King Charles for his professional handling of the investigation, though the honor brought him little satisfaction. The man who had spent his career protecting the royal family had been forced to investigate one of its most prominent members, an experience that would haunt him for the rest of his service. Jeffrey Whitworth faced criminal charges for his role in facilitating the thefts, eventually pleading guilty to conspiracy and receiving a suspended sentence in exchange for his cooperation with investigators. His testimony revealed additional details about how the scheme had operated and helped authorities recover several other items that had been sold through private channels. The investigation's conclusion brought little comfort to those who had worked closest to Queen Elizabeth II during her final years. Palace staff struggled with feelings of failure, believing they had somehow let down the beloved monarch by failing to protect her most precious possessions. Counseling services were quietly provided to help them process the emotional trauma of discovering that someone they had trusted and respected could be capable of such betrayal. The long-term impact on the monarchy remained uncertain, but the swift and decisive response to the crisis helped maintain public confidence in the institution's ability to police itself. King Charles's willingness to sacrifice his personal happiness for the greater good of the crown earned him grudging respect from critics who had questioned his fitness to rule. Years later, historians would debate the true motivations behind the thefts and whether alternative solutions might have been possible. What remained undeniable was that the recovery of Queen Elizabeth's lost heirlooms had prevented irreplaceable pieces of British history from disappearing forever into private collections around the world. The golden locket, in particular, became a symbol of the monarchy's resilience and commitment to preserving its heritage for future generations. Visitors to the Queen's Gallery often paused before its display case, reading the simple inscription that identified it as a treasured personal possession of Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, recovered through the dedication of those who served the crown. In the end, the scandal that could have destroyed the monarchy instead demonstrated its capacity for renewal and reform. The painful lessons learned during those dark weeks led to enhanced security protocols, improved oversight of royal treasures, and a renewed commitment to transparency that helped restore public trust in an institution that had weathered its greatest crisis in generations.